In the dim glow of an upscale restaurant, a billionaire father sat rigidly, his world of wealth and control shattered in an instant. His young son, confined to a wheelchair by a rare neurological disorder, had always been shielded from the chaos of life, treated like fragile glass. But on this ordinary evening, a black waitress, overlooked and underpaid, extended her hand to the boy during a quiet lull. As music drifted from the speakers, she allowed him to lead a simple dance step from his chair, his face lighting up with unbridled joy. What the father witnessed next unraveled decades of buried prejudice, forcing him to confront a truth that would forever alter his empire and his soul. How could one fleeting act expose the cracks in a life built on division? Alexander Hargrove had built his fortune from nothing, rising through the cutthroat world of real estate in the heart of Atlanta. By his mid-50s, he commanded billions, his name synonymous with luxury high-rises that dotted the skyline like trophies of his unyielding ambition. Yet beneath the polished veneer of boardrooms and private jets lay a man shaped by the segregated South of his youth. Whispers of old family tales, stories of keeping things separate for the sake of order, had ingrained in him a quiet disdain for those who didn't fit his narrow vision of success. He rationalized it as pragmatism, not prejudice, dismissing diversity initiatives in his companies as unnecessary distractions. His only vulnerability was his son, Ethan, now 12 years old. Born prematurely, Ethan had developed a condition that weakened his legs, leaving him reliant on a sleek, custom wheelchair that Alexander had commissioned from the finest engineers. The boy was the center of his father's universe, homeschooled by elite tutors and attended by a staff that catered to every one of his needs. Alexander's love for Ethan was fierce, almost possessive, born from the guilt of a demanding career that had strained his marriage until it crumbled. He vowed to protect his son from the world's harsh edges, curating a bubble of privilege where Ethan's disability was managed, not embraced. On a humid summer evening in 2023, inspired by a rare true story of unexpected kindness in a divided city, Alexander decided to venture out. He chose Le Chateau, an exclusive French bistro known for its discretion and high society clientele. It was meant to be a simple father-son outing, a break from the isolation of their sprawling estate. As they entered, the maître d' ushered them to a secluded table overlooking the garden. The air hummed with soft jazz, and waitstaff glided like shadows. Among them was Maya, a young black woman in her late 20s, her uniform crisp despite the long hours. She had taken the job to support her dreams of opening a community center, enduring subtle slights from patrons who saw her as invisible help. Alexander barely noticed her at first, his mind on a pending deal, but Ethan's eyes sparkled at the lively atmosphere, his fingers tapping rhythmically to the music. Little did Alexander know, this night would plant the seeds of curiosity, drawing him toward an encounter that challenged everything he believed. As the evening unfolded, Alexander's discomfort grew subtly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. He watched the room with a critical eye, noting how the diverse staff contrasted with his own monochromatic executive team. Maya approached their table with a warm efficiency, her movements graceful despite the weight of trays and expectations. She placed the menus down gently, her smile genuine, but Alexander's response was curt, his gaze averted, as if acknowledging her fully might disrupt his carefully ordered world. Ethan, however, lit up at her presence, his usual shyness melting away as he pointed excitedly at the dessert options. The boy's enthusiasm was a rare spark, one that Alexander cherished, yet it stirred an unease in him. Why did his son respond so readily to this stranger? The restaurant buzzed with life as more guests arrived, their laughter mingling with the clink of silverware. Alexander's thoughts drifted to his upbringing,
memories of his father's stern warnings about mixing with the wrong crowd echoing faintly. He had carried those lessons into his business, subtly steering hires away from anyone who might complicate team dynamics, justifying it as cultural fit. But here, in this public space, the lines blurred. Maya returned with their appetizers, her poise unbroken, even as another table nearby murmured complaints about service speed, their tones laced with entitlement. Alexander overheard snippets, words that hinted at racial undertones, and felt a fleeting twinge, familiar yet distant. Ethan's restlessness built as the music swelled, a live pianist transitioning to upbeat rhythms that had a few patrons swaying in their seats. The boy fidgeted, his hands mimicking dance moves he'd seen in videos, his wheelchair a barrier he longed to transcend. Alexander tried to distract him with stories of upcoming vacations, but Ethan's eyes kept wandering to the open space near the bar, where couples occasionally twirled. Maya, during a brief lull in her duties, noticed the boy's longing gaze while clearing nearby plates. She paused, her own history flashing before her. Growing up in a neighborhood where community dances fostered belonging, despite the systemic barriers that pushed her family to the margins. Inspired by tales of resilience from civil rights eras, she felt a pull to bridge the gap. Tension mounted as Alexander's phone buzzed with work alerts, pulling him mentally away. He signaled for the check prematurely, eager to retreat to familiarity. But the pianist announced a short interlude, inviting anyone to join in a light-hearted line dance. The room hesitated, then a few adventurous souls stepped forward. Ethan leaned forward eagerly, his face pleading without words. His protective instincts flared. He couldn't bear the thought of his son exposed to pitying stares. Yet in that moment of indecision, Maya set down her tray and approached quietly, her empathy overriding protocol. She knelt to Ethan's level, offering her hand in a gesture of inclusion. The boy's fingers clasped hers, and slowly she guided him in a seated adaptation, letting him dictate the sway. Alexander froze, a mix of horror and intrigue washing over him. Whispers rippled through the room, some admiring, others judgmental, amplifying the racial divide that simmered beneath the surface. His heart raced. This simple act of kindness from someone he would have dismissed challenged the walls he'd built. As the music crescendoed, the injustice of his own biases began to crack, building toward an inevitable confrontation with his prejudices. The music reached its peak, filling the restaurant with an infectious rhythm that seemed to pulse through the air like a heartbeat. Ethan, emboldened by Maya's gentle encouragement, took the lead in their improvised dance, his wheelchair rolling slightly as he directed her steps with surprising confidence. His laughter, pure and unrestrained, cut through the murmurs, drawing eyes from every corner. Maya moved with him seamlessly, her face alight with shared joy, transforming the moment into something transcendent. For the first time, Ethan wasn't just participating, he was guiding, his disability fading into the background amid the harmony. Alexander's world narrowed to this scene, his fists clenching under the table. A surge of protectiveness collided with an unfamiliar rage, not at Maya, but at the invisible barriers society had imposed. Flashes of his past assaulted him, boardroom decisions where he'd overlooked qualified black candidates, casual remarks that perpetuated exclusion, all under the guise of meritocracy. The room's reactions amplified the tension. Some patrons smiled warmly, while others exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort a mirror to his own ingrained racism. One couple nearby whispered harshly, their words dripping with condescension about appropriateness, igniting a fire in Alexander's chest. As Ethan beamed and Maya twirled under his direction, Alexander rose abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The music faltered slightly, heads turning. He strode forward, his face a storm of emotions, anger at the world's cruelty, shame at his complicity, and a dawning awe at the humanity before him. The climax hit like a thunderclap. He realized this simple act exposed the racial injustices he'd ignored, from unequal opportunities in his city to the daily microaggressions Maya likely endured. His hand trembled as he reached out, not to stop them, but to join, his barriers crumbling in the face of his son's unfiltered happiness. The room held its breath, the emotional stakes peaking as Alexander confronted the man he'd become. As the music faded, the restaurant returned to its subdued hum. But for Alexander, nothing would be the same. He knelt beside Ethan, whose exhausted but radiant smile spoke volumes, and for the first time he truly saw Maya, not as a server, but as a beacon of compassion in a fractured world.
Overwhelmed, he arranged a quiet conversation later that evening, learning of her aspirations and the systemic hurdles she faced, echoes of broader racial inequities that plagued communities like hers. Inspired, he pledged support for her community center, channeling resources from his empire to fund it fully. In the months that followed, Alexander's transformation rippled outward. He overhauled his company's policies, mandating diversity training and actively recruiting from underrepresented groups, drawing from real initiatives that had reshaped corporations post-2020 reckonings. Ethan's confidence blossomed. Outings became regular, with dance therapy integrated into his routine, fostering independence. Alexander's once isolated life opened up, forging alliances with activists who educated him on the deep-rooted injustices he'd overlooked. This story, drawn from the essence of true encounters where unexpected kindness bridged divides, reminds us that change often sparks in the most ordinary moments. What if one act of empathy could dismantle a lifetime of prejudice? In a world still grappling with racial divides, perhaps the real power lies in allowing others to lead the dance, inviting us all to reflect. When will you step forward and let humanity guide your next move?